All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So give us a subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you already have, tell a friend. If you haven't, please do. Also, hit the bell for notifications and new videos when they go up, and of course, upvote the video itself. It is Thursday. It's Cara McCutcheon Day, and how you doing, Cara?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
You still
Still on my baseball high here.
Yeah, I hope you watched that.
Yeah, it's been washed. Yeah. They already won, so it's definitely been washed.
Okay. Today, realignment's the big news. The second segment of the show was basically all about realignment and my 20-team SEC draw out of what a potential Ole Miss schedule would look like and what the pods would look like. Now, you're following realignment as well on Twitter, and there's been a lot of talks about mergers recently. And what are you hearing?
So there's a lot of different rumors going on. I think the newest one is that the ACC and the PAC are having some sort of loose partnership that would end. Yeah, loose partnership, because we saw the alliance did so well already. So having some kind of loot there where there would be a championship between the two in Vegas. That was kind of discussed this morning as a rumor. There's rumor that the Big 12 is trying to get, I think, Washington, Oregon, both Arizonas, and then Colorado. So that's been up. Not a lot from the Big 10 on what they're doing, where Notre Dame's at, and what's kind of going on there. So there's a lot of discussion that maybe the ACC is trying to buy in some time because they know they're kind of next to be kind of picked apart. So lots and lots of rumors happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my thoughts when I read this, and I don't know if this is potential, and if anybody watching this is a lawyer, you can put a comment down below and tell me I'm an idiot. But if they negotiate for more money for a championship game between the Pac-12 and the ACC in Las Vegas, would that not constitute a renegotiation of rights, and the grant of rights potentially get thrown out the window?
Yeah, I think that's also been discussed, is if they do these things that it would cause a renegotiation, which I think if a renegotiation occurs with the ACC, then SEC is definitely probably coming in at that point.
Yeah. At that point right there, I almost think these teams are trying to force this to happen so they can legally get out of their grant of rights.
Get out of their contract, right. So I think so. I know Clemson, there's a lot of talks about Clemson, Virginia Tech. I think it's Clemson, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and maybe Miami that are wanting to come to the SEC. So
and North Carolina as well. They're probably the big dog that they would want to get over the Big Ten, but the Big Ten also probably wants them.
Yeah, I think there's also the AAU university thing that is really pulling. So I think that's the thing with the Big Ten, not so much with SEC. So it just kind of depends on what they're there for, if they're wanting kind of more that sports competitive or also that academic side.
Yeah, they're going to talk about the SEC being this non-educational league that you can go to, but with Texas A&M, Missouri, Texas, Florida, Georgia, all of these are really good schools. North Carolina, if they came in, there'd be a nice little foundation that even though the whole league isn't, we are AAU, they would be able to fit in. Everybody that wants to talk about how North Carolina might be a fish out of water, it's probably because the SEC doesn't play enough sports rather than anything on the academic end.
Yeah, I think honestly money talks at the end of the day. So if that's something that's meaningful, then they're going to go there. But I think at the end of the day, money talks, and maybe some will push that way. I would love to see a conference that has UNC and Kentucky, maybe Duke, but I don't know if we'd get Duke, but I think it'd be fun.
No, Florida State, good basketball program as of late. But my idea for a 20-team SEC, and I talked about it in the last segment, is adding Florida State, adding Clemson, and then either or of North Carolina State, and Virginia Tech. So those two are interchangeable, but the first two are not. So any four of those. So if North Carolina says no, you just get North Carolina State. and that fills in for that. If Virginia says no, you go get Virginia Tech. And you have 4 pods of 5, and you play everybody in your pod, 2 permanent rivals, and then 1 team from every other pod every year. And it works out to where like every 4 or 5 years you play everybody in the 20-team conference. But your traditional rivalries and the things that everybody cares about, you can protect those. But yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. It was on my Twitter timeline, the Stephen Willis, if you want to see how I drew it out. But obviously it would need to be tweaked, but it is a framework that is quite interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of concern with the 2 super conferences coming in and what those are going to do. But I mean, I think this is where we're headed. I think we've been headed here for some time. Maybe I think though these loose partnerships are not going to work. You're either going to have to merge or kind of fall apart almost, so to speak. But I think we're definitely headed to see a very different world in college football.
Yeah, I explained earlier on the show that basically these alliances, they're not designed to do anything but slow the process down so you can take a breath and figure out so you can have time to do what you plan to do. And the Big Ten proved that last year. They slowed everything down basically by leverage of the playoffs. That's how they were able to do that. And then they got UCLA and USC, and they're like, hey, we're pretty good. And then all of a sudden the Big 12 is like, they're panic shopping at the moment because they know they can get a really good deal on Oregon and Washington potentially. But part of them coming to the Big 12 is a grant of rights. So it's a whole big thing. They're also talking about Stanford might just basically drop down to like FCS.
Or go independent.
Yeah, or go independent, or they just have no interest in big-time college football. But, I mean, Stanford is an FCS team, or Stanford is a G5 team. That's kind of a weird thing for me. I think Berkeley would do the same thing, whatever that Stanford does.
Yeah, there's even talks that if the Big Ten is not interested in Oregon, they would even think about going independent. Which, honestly, I think independent is just not going to work. I think the Super Conference scheduling would be a nightmare. It would be too hard. I just think it's kind of forcing, even as we saw BYU, but also Notre Dame, probably to start looking into getting into conferences. So I think going independent would be very, very hard.
Yeah. And other than fan bases finding a home, and throughout all of this and the excitement that comes with it, the big winner in this whole thing is probably going to be the Mountain West Conference, because Oregon State and Washington State is going to fall completely into their laps.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of talk with Mountain West, grabbing onto a few. It'll be interesting. If we can get 3 big conferences, maybe we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It definitely is. Now, before we get out of here, I do want to talk. Mike Farrell, who I used to work with at Rivals, know Mike quite well, released a list of the top coaching hires over the last 5 or 10 years. I don't know exactly what the time frame was, but the number 1 on that list was Sam Pitman.
Yes,
who is a good coach and a phenomenal hire either way. This is nothing against Sam, but Lane Kiffin is down at like 4, and Lane Kiffin went to a Sugar Bowl last year in the same time frame that Sam Pittman was in Arkansas. What do you take from this?
I'm not so much against Sam. I think Lane definitely should top that list. Sam Pittman was an amazing hire. He's obviously taken Arkansas to new heights. One of the things that's been brought up is, Sam kind of fell into that job, role that Arkansas's original plan was for Lane. Lane did not go, obviously. And that job kind of just fell to Sam Pittman, and obviously he knocked it out of the park. He's doing well there. He's building. But I think what Lane has done, obviously 2 programs that were in very need of some rebuilding. So would I say Sam is a top 5 hire? Absolutely. Would I say he's number 1? No, I don't give it to him quite yet. I still think he has a little bit to go. I think he did a great job in his first year, and see how he builds on that this year.
So, okay, other than Lane number 1 and Sam being a top 5, who else would you put in that category right now, in that top 5?
I think Mel Tucker was a good hire. I don't think his first year he was in a bowl, but that was, I believe, COVID,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of problems in the Big Ten. So, might not really be a strike against him. But he also, I believe, they played Pitt. They had some big wins. They were in a New Year's, NY Six Bowl. My bad, sorry. But they were also in MI6 Bowl. So I think Lane and Mel are probably pretty close, I would say. I would put Mel and Lane both up at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's a pretty good thing for the 2015 Alabama coaching staff. Which, by the way, have you seen where those guys are? It's like Billy Napier, Mel Tucker, Kirby Smart. I mean, it's just like a who's who of winners in college football right now.
I think the one that was my biggest problem on that list was number 3 was Ryan Day. And my issue is not that Ryan Day is not a great coach. He obviously is a very great coach. My issue there is Ohio State is a blue blood. It's a top, 5 program every year. It's a well-oiled machine. There's not a lot of talent gap from when Urban Meyer left to when Ryan Day took over. Recruiting wise, not saying their job's not hard. There is some competition, especially with Alabama, Georgia. But for the most part, Ohio State does a pretty good job of getting recruits on its name, on its brand. Where I would say is a Lane, a Mel, even a Sam Pittman, maybe even Dave Aranda have to do a little more work to build those programs from where they were. And it takes a lot more to get that talent, to get those movings, the things that they were overcoming, morale. So not taking away from Ryan Day. He's a great coach. I just would not put him in the top 3.
Yeah, it does kind of seem to me for him, he inherited a Ferrari and was basically just told not to wreck it.
Yeah.
I agree with that completely because Arkansas and Michigan State and Ole Miss and even, well, not necessarily Baylor because they had Matt Rule and he'd kind of pieced it together. But those 3 were, for lack of a better word, a dumpster fire. And
Right.
yeah, I completely agree. Ryan Day just had to continue what Urban Meyer did before, I guess he had another fake heart attack. I don't know why he left Ohio State.
Yeah, I would say I usually give Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley the same kind of. I think that Lincoln Riley's true test of being a head coach is now at USC and see what he does there. I think he kind of grabbed that well-oiled machine from Bob Stoops that he built and kind of just his role was don't sink the ship. So
Yeah,
I think
I've got a problem with Lincoln Riley because Oklahoma, we have called them on my SEC After Dark show for 2 years, Charmin Extra Soft, because that's exactly what they are. It's the softest football team I've ever seen, and that's what he's going to do out in USC because except without there, you don't have the toughness of a Brent Venables defense in there. You go to an air raid system where the defense was already soft. I mean, he has a chance to fail spectacularly at SC.
Yeah, I think even NIL, some other things there, going to the Big Ten, like he's got a lot of stuff going on his side. I just don't give Lincoln Riley some of the hype he gets. I think Lincoln Riley still has some things he has to prove.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, Cara, thank you. I look forward to this every week. Cara McCutcheon joining us. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hotty toddy.
Howdy, toddy.